Hi, and welcome to the Senior Network. I'm your host, Greg Fulton. Today we're joined by Becky Davis, the Cypress of Hilton. Hey, good to see you again.
Thanks for having us.
And Dr. Gordon Kruger with Friends of Caroline Hospice, Medical Director. Glad to have you.
Nice to be here.
Mr. Neil Honeycutt, right at home, in-home care. Good to have you.
Thanks for being here.
Well, I have to say we're in this wonderful setting today with Friends of Caroline in Port Royal. I think, Becky, it's the first time we filmed in Port Royal, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, it's lovely.
It's
Talk about
gorgeous.
a typical, beautiful, low country South Carolina day. Just gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Well, Doctor, I know you live here. Tell us a little bit about Port Royal.
Well, I first found out about Port Royal when I was in residency up at Spartanburg. And back then, almost 40 years ago, it was a lot different than it is right now. It was just a big, wide, empty street at, probably 100 degrees with steam humidity. And we didn't know where we were. We thought we had found Beaufort when we found Port Royal after visiting Parris Island.
Right.
And my wife and I looked at each other and said, why don't we go join the Navy and see what other parts of the world there are to see? And then it's fascinating that as we've gotten a chance to come back and practice in Beaufort and actually work here in Port Royal, how unique and special both the location and the people are in the town.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic, gorgeous. We appreciate you letting us be here today.
Thank you.
I want to find out, I know it's the first time on the show, but how important your role is, I know, from being in the business. And just tell us a little bit about what the role of medical director would be.
Well, I'll try, but my wife told me I can't lecture. So I'll try to...
Well, we only have a certain amount of time too, so...
Yeah, well, it has been a very positive evolution in my medical career. In my previous life as a surgeon, the atmosphere for almost 40 years was if you can't cut it, you can't cure it. Mm-hmm. And now that I've been volunteered and seasoned in hospice for 5 years and probably taken care of close to 500 patients in that period of time, wow. I've actually learned to listen. Mm-hmm. And listening to patients and getting them to talk.
Yep, exactly.
As we were discussing some before we started filming, this is an entirely different disease pattern. It's not what the patient's primary disease is, whether they have end-stage heart disease, renal disease, or even a cancer. It's how they handle that diagnosis and how they handle it through their denial, because everyone is in denial.
Right.
And working through getting them to feel comfortable to express that denial and go on to the reality of their grief, and then dealing with the grief in a way that only really a hospice can help. I mean, the well-rounded team approach, sure, letting them work through this, lets them get on with the life they have.
Right. Between
the time of their acceptance of their terminal diagnosis, so to speak,
right,
and their actual death. To me, that's what the hospice is really about, and that's what I enjoy working here.
Great. And I know, Neil, you know, obviously on the home care side, we work a lot with hospice.
Yeah, that's correct.
Tell me a little bit, your role as a social worker. I know a lot of folks may not understand really what that entails.
Yeah, well, a social worker has a broad-ranging role. We work with individuals, families, and groups of people to try to help them formulate strategies of improving their lives. Social workers, you know, one thing that we do is you can find a social worker in the healthcare setting. Right. You can find a social worker in the social services setting, welfare, you know, with people with disabilities, and also the mental health, you know, setting. So there's a broad-ranging role for social workers, but at the end of the day, a social worker is there to try to help people through their challenges, sure, but not to fix. A lot of times people think we come in and fix things for people, but what we're doing is we're helping them fix their lives. And we're helping them to access the resources necessary to do that. So that's the broad range of what a social worker does.
All right, Becky, we've talked about their roles, and we know how important you are.
Well, I know, but you know, there is a common denominator, and one is, of course, is denial that we're aging. So believe it or not, I face the same challenges at the Cypress. Folks denying that they're going to need the services of the Cypress at a later date. So that is a common theme. And you know, my philosophy is you just constantly have to be recalibrating your life. You know, where am I at this point in my life, and how can I make it better? So whether that be, you know, staying in my home, is that the best option?
Right.
And again, like I said, a lot of people deny that I'm aging in place. My home is not the best place for me to continue to live.
Right.
And that's where the Cypress comes in. And I do the same thing. I'm not a fixer, but I sure do, you know, give them the resources to make their life better, whether that be
Absolutely.
in an independent living setting or, you know, folks do move directly into the Preston Health Center. They don't have to go into independent living. So they can go, you know, directly into our nursing facility. But I too would like to think that at the end of the day, you know, I'm providing a service and a gift to the family with, you know, all the services that we have at the Cypress, whether it be the housekeeping, the transportation. You know, it's funny. I just had some folks in my office yesterday, and who are getting on my wait list, which is great, and they're like in the early 70s. And they're talking about, I say we offer transportation, no charge to the grocery stores and doctor's offices. Like, no, I'm still driving. We're good. I'm like, I know you are, but what is your 95-year-old self going to do?
Exactly.
I mean, your 95-year-old self may not be driving. So
A little planning.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good to have a plan.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, hold that thought. We're going
Okay.
to take a break. Stay with us here on the Senior Network. We'll be right back.